What's up guys, Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and I am back with the Unearthed Arcana versus Guildmasters Guide to Ravnica comparison video. This time we're talking about the Circle of Spores Druid, and boy oh boy, did it get fucked. I don't think there's a better way to describe that. I thought it was really good the way it was, and they just took it hardcore in the other direction. And maybe you think I'm being too hard on it, and maybe you're right. But as someone who's played in a similar scenario with a different class, I can say that what we're going to talk about in a second can be the most just disappointing thing to go through. Let's take a look here. All right, we've got our Unearthed Arcana on the left and our Guildmasters Guide to Ravnica on D&D Beyond on the right. So, first of all, what do we get? Very cool stuff. We get Chill Touch as a cantrip. Great. You're a druid. You don't have a ton of options for damaging cantrips. You definitely don't have access to necromantic magic. So Chill Touch, or necromancy cantrips rather. Chill Touch is very good. It's an attack roll, so I guess it can kind of make you feel like you have a little bit more control than enemies making saving throws. And one of the coolest things is you just get a whole bunch of spells prepared, similar to the way the Circle of the Land Druid gets spells, or a domain spells from a cleric, or oath spells from a paladin, and they're pretty good spells. 3rd, 5th, 7th, and 9th level, you get these circle spells. They don't count against your spells prepared, and you always have them. And if they weren't on the druid list, they're on the druid list for you. So let's see what we got. We originally had Gentle Repose and Ray of Enfeeblement. That has changed to Blindness, Deafness, and Gentle Repose. Fine with that. Animate Dead, Gaseous Form, both of those. Blatant Confusion, same. Cloud Kill, Contagion. Alright, good set of spells. Some of these not on the Druid spell list. Nothing bad to have. Some of them that are on the Druid spell list just save you from having to prepare them at a later date. And here's where we start to go downhill. Alright, Halo of Spores in the Unearthed Arcana. You can launch toxic spores at other creatures. To do so, you use your reaction on your turn to deal 3 poison damage to one creature you can see within 10 feet of you. This damage increases to 6 at 6, 9 at 10, and 12 at 14. Alright, so let's talk about why that's good and why that's bad. 1, Wizards of the Coast does not like static damage, it seems, and I'm okay with that. They like static hit points, like things where, let's say a Glamour Bard can give their allies hit points, temporary hit points, and it's a number. Same thing with like the Samurai Fighter. They can get temporary hit points and it's a number. Whereas things where, like, let's say you're a College of Whispers Bard, or something like that, you deal D6's worth of damage rather than a set number of damage. So I anticipated this 3, 6, 9, and 12 to change to maybe D6s, right? A D6, 2D6, 3D6, 4D6, whatever the case may be, right? It would change to be dice. And the reason that I thought it was relatively balanced is that it was poison damage, right? You're dealing spores, fungi, seems like a poison-based thing. And poison damage is one of the most resisted damage types in the game by existing monsters in any of the source material. And in fact, a lot of monsters are immune to that type of damage. Like, for instance, every single kind of undead. So that was my balance. But the thing is, it was a reaction and it was guaranteed damage. So you would use your reaction, preventing you from getting opportunity attacks and anything like that, and you would deal a set value of damage without a save. You just do it. Okay, take away the set numbers, make it a die roll. Make it D4s, a D4, 2D4, 3D4, 4D4. 4D4 caps out at 12. I'm sorry, caps out at 16 rather. And the original damage number here was 12, and that's pretty good. That's not bad. You just feel like you're doing something, and leave it as poison damage. Well, what did we get? Well, it got changed to necrotic damage. Great, you may say. Necrotic damage is much less resisted than poison damage, and you would be right. But the kicker is, it now requires a Constitution save or no damage at all. At all. When a creature you can see moves into a space within 10 feet of you or starts its turn there, you can use your reaction to deal 1d4 necrotic damage to a creature unless it succeeds on a Constitution saving throw against your spell save DC. So here it goes from a d4 to a d6 to a d8 to a d10. So whatever the case may be, that's what they decided to do. That's fine. It's a little unfortunate because even at 14th level, you still have the chance of dealing 1 point of damage for using a function of your class and your reaction. You have the potential to deal 1 point of damage by rolling a 1 on a d10, but you also have the potential to do 0 damage because if they save, which is a Constitution save, which I'm not going to say all, but as you start to get into a higher level bracket, a lot of monsters just have a decent Constitution anyway, just to provide them hit points. We're talking 3, 4, 5, right? And your Constitution save at, I think, what is it, level 17 or something will likely be the most. At 19 would be your highest save without any funky stuff added in, right? 20 in the stat, 6 proficiency bonus, plus 8 is your 19. So if these higher level monsters have 3, 4, 5, sometimes the monsters can go even higher, 6, 7, 8 on their Constitution. And potentially in the scenario, your DM only has to roll a 10 or better to pass the save, then you waste your reaction and deal 0 points of damage. The reason I brought this up is I played an Artificer for 9 levels. The Unearthed Arcana as written Artificer for 9 levels. And I chose to play an Alchemist. And if you're familiar at all with that class, you have really cool attacks. You have this acid and these fire bombs, basically, that you can throw that blow up and deal damage to enemies. However, they need to make dexterity saving throws versus your intelligence your intelligence plus proficiency bonus plus 8. And if they pass the saving throw on the bombs, the really cool things that you spent your entire class on and have been leveling in to level up to increase the damage in them, they take 0 damage. So that's like, you're not a crazy spellcaster, you're not a melee class. They're a third caster, and they don't really have a ton of melee capabilities. So when you go this route, your alchemical bombs are your whole thing. And nothing sucks more than watching the druid, the fighter, and the paladin in the party just wreck house with their action, doing spells and awesome attacks. And you're like, I throw alchemical fire at him. Oh, he passed the save. Well, I did no damage. That's my turn. Move on. Now, I say that now, and you're like, but Ted, this is only using your reaction. And you would be right, and I can't fault you for that. But as we go further down, you'll see that this Constitution save or no damage carries with us. And before you say anything else, it's as written. If it doesn't say, it says if a creature succeeds on a Constitution, takes 1d4 damage to that creature unless it succeeds on a Constitution saving throw against your spell save DC. It does not say or takes half damage on a failed or on a successful. They take a d4 unless they succeed, meaning if they do succeed, they take 0 damage. It would say the half damage on a success. Granted, if you're only dealing at most a d10 at 14th level, how much is half damage really gonna be? So again, keep it poison damage, remove the saving throw, and maybe make it d4s. So at 14th level, if you decide to use your reaction for this, your minimum damage output is 4, and your maximum is 16, as opposed to 1 or 10. Alright, now there's some reasons they may have done that. We'll talk about that as we keep going. Sorry, I just needed to get that off my chest. Symbiotic Entity. Here, this was the really cool feature, right? You're a druid, and you don't need to use your wild shape to shape into animals, which is awesome, because not a lot of people do that. And if you're not a moon druid, it doesn't really have the longevity, or you weren't really going to do it as you get to higher levels. So when you use your wild shape feature, you awaken those spores rather than transforming. When you do so, you gain 3 temporary hit points per level you have in this class. The damage of your Halo of Spores, the feature from before, doubles. and your melee weapon attack deals an extra 1d6 poison damage to any target they hit. This lasts for 10 minutes or until you use Wild Shape again. Okay, so potentially, had you been at 14th level and you used Symbiotic Entity and Halo of Spores, that would be a reaction-free 24 points of damage. So that's probably a little much. And if we went with what I had said, it did 4d4, that would be 8d4 damage, so that would actually be more. But maybe you just make it 4d4 and it adds your wisdom modifier. So now it's maximum 21 points of damage, which was actually less than that. And there's a degree of randomness, and it's not so bad. Your minimum damage would be potentially 9 if you had a 20 in your wisdom modifier. Okay. Symbiotic Entity here in the published source is basically the same. As an action, you expend a use of your Wild Shape feature. You now get 4 temporary hit points for each level you have in the class, so potentially an extra 80 temporary hit points if you Wild Shape and use this feature at level 20. As a reminder, it doesn't negate your ability to Wild Shape and turn into an animal like you normally would. It just gives you another tool in your toolbox. You also get the following benefit. When you roll your Halo of Spores damage roll the die a second time and add it to the total. You still do an extra d6 poison damage when you hit a target with melee. So now at level 14, you do 2d10. So you'd be at a minimum of 2 damage and a maximum of 20 damage. I still stand by make it a d4 for each one. 1, 2, 3, 4d4. And Symbiotic Entity adds your wisdom modifier to this Halo of Spores damage. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Benefits last for 10 minutes. That's the same. However, now, until you lose all the temporary hit points or you use Wild Shape again. So if you get knocked out of your temporary hit points early on, you lose your entire Symbiotic Entity ability, which sucks. Because at level 20, that's 80 temporary hit points. People are going to have to really knock you down to knock that out of you. But at level 2, that's 8 temporary hit points. And you're using something that you can't, that basically, I don't know, temporary hit points. You have 2 Wild Shapes for short rest. But, like, what if you did this because you really wanted to cast Shillelagh to do a d8 damage with your quarterstaff and do a d8 plus a d6 damage to try to get a little extra oomph into that melee attack, and somebody hits you for 10 points of damage, and now you lost that whole ability. It's gone. You spent your action doing it. Let me just make sure that nothing was different. Okay. Yeah, okay, so it is still your action, but you just spent your whole action to activate this ability, and you take 10 points of damage at level 2, and you just wasted your action, and none of the benefits are still there. So I think it was better to keep it at 10 minutes or until you Wild Shape again, because no fight's going to last 10 minutes. That would take forever in a D&D game. So, I don't know. I don't think that makes a lot of sense, but it is what we have. So let's move on to Fungal Infestation. Fungal Infestation, if you slay a humanoid with your Halo of Spores, which is now nigh impossible, the creature rises as a zombie at the end of the turn. It has 1 hit point. In combat, its turn is immediately after yours. It obeys your mental commands, and the only action it can take is the attack action, making 1 melee attack. It remains animate for 1 hour, after which point it collapses and dies. Now, it is specifically here, now it's if a beast or humanoid that is small or medium size dies within 10 feet of you, you can use your reaction to animate it, causing it to stand up immediately with 1 hit point. Uses the zombie stat blocks at the monster manual, remains for 1 hour. In combat, it acts immediately after yours, it obeys your mental commands, and the only action it knows how to do is take the attack action, making 1 melee attack. And now you can use this feature a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. Alright, I said this before when I did the review of it. As it stood, it was ridiculous, because you could just murder a bunch of rats or something like that at the time, and just have an army of 1 hit point enemies to just go through and wreck a whole bunch of shit, and stock up with a whole bunch of enemies for an hour, and just send them all in to just take damage and maybe deal a little bit of damage. So, 1, my thought's gone because they specified it has to be a small or medium creature, so you can't use rats because they're tiny sized. They also now need to die within 10 feet of you, So you need to force yourself to be within melee range for most creatures, or at least threatening melee range, to be able to even use this feature. And I'm okay with it being wisdom modifier times per day, because before it was unlimited and you could literally build an army. And now it's a little more balanced by making it only maximum typically 5 times per long rest. Previously it was if you slay a humanoid. Now it's if a beast or humanoid that is small or medium dies within 10 feet of you. So you get a little more leeway. You get animals and humans. And but they limit the size, small or medium, which is fine because most beasts and humanoids are small or medium size. But again, they have to die. This was before if you slay a humanoid. So you could have slayed a humanoid at a distance with a spell or a ranged weapon, and then choose to bring it back. Also, it didn't require any action economy, which was the other problem before. It wasn't a reaction to animate it. If you slay a creature with your Halo of Spores damage, which I guess is within 10 feet until a little bit later. If you slay a creature with Halo Spores, it rises as a zombie at the end of your turn. So that was just a free thing. You just got it at the end of your turn. Now you have to use a reaction, and I'm okay with that. I think that makes sense. Use your reaction to activate it. Keep it wisdom modifier times per day. That's all good. But I guess I got a little hung up there on the within 10 feet of you. But before it was just with your Halo of Spores damage. But coming up at 10th level, you can throw your Halo of Spores at a distance. Here, it's within 10 feet of you regardless. So also, you know, I don't know. I just... But they have to die within 10 feet of you, so technically an ally could kill them if they're within 10 feet of you, and you'd still get the benefit. So, I don't know, I guess jury's still out on my mind. I guess this is probably better and more balanced overall, right? Limiting it to 5 times per long rest, typically, smaller, medium, giving you beasts as over just humanoids, and making it die, not you kill it. So that's okay. I guess that's fine. Now, spreading spores in the Unearthed Arcana. As a bonus action, you can hurl your fungal spores up to 30 feet away, where they swirl in a 10-foot cube for a minute. While the cube spores persists, you can't use your Halo of Spores feature, but any creature that starts its turn in the cube takes your Halo of Spores damage. The cube of spores vanishes early if you use this feature again. So to my point from before, here with the fungal infestation, you could throw your spores up to 30 feet away, and if you slayed a creature with your Halo of Spores up to 30 feet away, it would rise at the end of your turn wherever it fell. Now, you still have to it needs to die within 10 feet. Let's look at spreading spores. Still a bonus action, but now it's a bonus action while your Symbiotic Entity feature is active. So before, it was just a thing you could do. Now you have to use your action to activate the Symbiotic Entity, and then a bonus action to activate spreading spores. You can still hurl it 30 feet away in a 10-foot cube for 1 minute. Spores disappear early if you use this feature again. Whenever a creature moves into the cube or starts its turn there, that creature takes your Halo of Spores damage unless it succeeds on a Constitution saving throw against your spell save DC. A creature can take this damage no more than once per turn. While the cube of spores persists, you can't use your Halo of Spores reaction. So it says over here you can't use it as well, so that's fine. But again, it's still tacked to that con save, and now again at level 10, your damage I think is a D8. So, you know, a cube that does a D8 worth of damage, I don't know. At least before it was 9 static points of damage. Or if you follow my idea, it would be 3d4 damage. Unless you had your Symbiotic Entity up, then it'd be 3d4 plus 5. So I guess if you had Symbiotic Entity up, which you have to activate it in the Unearthed Arcana, which is dumb, you shouldn't give somebody an ability that requires them to use their other ability to even use it. Because think about that, right? To use your entire 10th level ability, you have to use one of your previous abilities, or this does literally nothing. Nothing. Remember my point before where if you took damage and lost your temporary hit points, you lose your Symbiotic Entity. Take that into effect now that your Spreading Spores ability only works with Symbiotic Entity active. So the fact that you made it tied to the temporary hit points is even worse, because now your whole 10th level ability is keyed off something that you can get knocked out of even easier. Before, it was a whole 10 minutes. So you had 10 minutes to use your 10th level ability. Now, if you're knocked out of it early, your whole 10th level ability does nothing. Nothing. I'm sorry. I'm rereading all of this stuff now as I'm going through it here with you guys for the review. That is ridiculous. You're gonna take 10 levels in this class to get some really cool stuff. A 10th level Moon Druid can turn into freaking elementals. I've got this badass ability that I have to use my whole action to activate another ability that I only get 2 of per short rest to then use one whole ability in my tool set. What? Guys, we're 4 years, I think, into the cycle of 5th edition. How are we making these mistakes? This is ridiculous. Forget about all my issues about the damage and the con save. You gave us an ability we can't use unless we use another ability. That's dumb. I like synergistic things. The synergy of it before was you could throw your Halo of Spores damage at a distance and it did damage. And the synergy was if you used Symbiotic Entity and did Spreading Spores, it did extra damage. Now, you don't have the option. You do the extra damage, but you're locked in. That's so dumb. Alright. I'm gonna just yell about this for a while, so let's keep moving. Sorry. So again, previously, Fungal Infestation worked well because you could throw your Halo of Spores at a distance to do damage to people. Let's see. While the cube of spores persists, any creature that starts its turn in the cube takes your Halo of Spores damage. So it was only at the start of their turn. The only difference they made here that makes it slightly better is if they move into the cube or start their turn there, which did kind of suck before. They'd have to move into it. If they moved into it, they didn't take damage. It was only if they started there. That just sounded like a mistake because typically all spells with a radius have that. Start their turn there or move into it, or, starts their turn there for the first time on a turn. That's kind of standard language. So that may have just got overlooked on the before it came out for playtest. But yeah, before you could throw your Halo of Spores 30 feet away, and if you killed the creature, they rose as a zombie. Now you gotta be within 10 feet. So you're probably going to want to use your Symbiotic Entity to get this because you want to be within 10 feet. You want to have the hit points to survive. But again, the only time you can use your Symbiotic Entity... Okay, one last thing about this, because it's really dumb. So what does Symbiotic Entity do? It gives you temporary hit points to make you harder to kill. Typically, because you're taking damage. Now, this could be a spell slinging battle, and the temporary hit points help protect you from spells at a distance. What else does it let you do? It lets you do a d6 on your melee attack. So when you're in melee, and it lets you deal your Halo of Spores damage, and you roll 2 dice. Halo of Spores only works till 10 feet away. So, take that all in. Symbiotic Entity, when you look at it in the whole package, seems like it's a thing designed to allow you to do more damage up close, within 10 feet. And it's using your wild shape, when typically, when you wild shape into an animal, it's to either provide yourself more hit points to survive, or to potentially turn into an animal to deal damage to an enemy. So now, the only time you can use your Spreading Spores ability, which allows you to throw your spores 30 feet away, is when you activate an ability that is primarily designed to protect you and boost your damage within relative melee range of 10 feet. What? The only benefit is... Nope. Wow. Okay. Let's beat a dead horse. So, Symbiotic Entity, more hit points, better damage to your thing that only works 10 feet away, and better melee damage. Probably going to use it if you're getting up close and personal. Great, now that synergizes with people dying within 10 feet of you with your Fungal Infestation. But like I said, you can throw this thing 30 feet away now to probably hit people at a distance. But it only works if you activate your thing that allows you to basically be better in a melee scenario or within 10 feet. So I was like, oh, just drop it on yourself. Right? That's how you do it, right? You throw your spores on yourself. It makes it a cube. That's the benefit, right? Rather than like you targeting a single creature and hitting them with the Halo Spores damage, you drop it on yourself and you're surrounded in a 10-foot cube. So now those people take damage. But you take the damage too. It's whenever a creature moves into the cube or starts its turn there, so it doesn't distinguish friend from foe. So that sucks. Before it was the same thing, but I'm just saying, when you package that all together, it's not like you could drop it on yourself to provide you some protection. Don't come within 10 feet of me, enemies. You'll take damage, but you'll take the damage too. And lastly, the ability is pretty much the same. Fungal Body. You can't be blinded, deafened, frightened, or poisoned. And if an attack is a critical hit against you, it does normal damage. Now it is blinded, deafened, frightened, or poisoned. The same. And any critical hits against you count against a normal hit unless you're incapacitated. So you can't be blinded, deafened, frightened, or poisoned regardless. And any critical hit is a regular hit unless you're incapacitated. Before, it was all the time. Because that sucks, because if you're incapacitated, that means people are going to get that crit on you anyway. I will never play this class. Bar none. Like, that's it. I really liked it in Unearthed Arcana. I get that it's playtest, and maybe I'm harping on this too much. But everybody I know who's read this and has read both versions is like, what did they do? It was so much better before. I'm extremely, extremely interested in what you guys have to say about this. Because as you can tell, I clearly feel very strongly about this. I'm sure I'm going to get comments down below that are going to be like, you harped on this too much. Oh my god, just move on. This is so dumb, blah, blah, blah. You know what? You're entitled to that opinion. But I honestly think that this was a huge misstep. And they went too far in the conservative direction. And again, remind you that spreading spores is a save or no damage. So even if you threw it, the people, if they make the Constitution save, they take 0 damage. So your whole action, potentially your bonus action, wasted to do nothing. You'd be better off just casting your spells, honestly. Use Symbiotic Entity to give yourself hit points to survive, and just cast spells. And I'll go to level 14 for immunities. I don't know. Anyway, guys, I'm sorry for the rant. I'll see you next time.